Dean Martin was leaving his late-night performance at the Sands Hotel on March 8, 1974, when he took a wrong turn in the parking garage and stumbled upon a scene that would haunt him forever. 3 young women being forced into the back of a van by men who were clearly not there to help them. What Dean did about that discovery would destroy one of the largest human trafficking operations in Las Vegas history and save the lives of 40 women who had been trapped in modern-day slavery. The discovery. Dean's usual driver had called in sick that night, so Dean was walking to his own car parked in the underground garage beneath the Sands Hotel. He had taken a wrong turn trying to find his Cadillac when he heard voices coming from around a concrete pillar. What he saw made him sick to his stomach. 3 men in expensive suits were forcing 2 young women, who couldn't have been older than 18, into the back of a windowless van. The women were clearly terrified, trying to resist, but they appeared to be drugged or weakened. "Please, I want to go home," one of the women was saying in heavily accented English. "You don't have a home anymore," one of the men replied coldly. "Your home is wherever we tell you it is." Dean realized he was witnessing something far more sinister than a simple kidnapping. The men were speaking casually about delivering the merchandise and making sure the clients get what they paid for. They discussed the women as if they were property rather than human beings. Dean quietly retreated behind a parked car and watched as the van drove away, memorizing the license plate number and the physical descriptions of the men involved. But Dean's investigation instincts told him that what he had just witnessed was part of a much larger operation. Over the next 3 days, Dean began conducting his own surveillance of the area around the Sands Hotel, looking for patterns and trying to understand the scope of what appeared to be a human trafficking network. What he discovered was far worse than he had initially suspected. The investigation. Dean spent the following week conducting a careful investigation, using his celebrity status to gain access to information that regular citizens couldn't obtain. He started by contacting Mickey Rudin, his attorney, and asking for help researching the license plate number he had memorized. The van was registered to a company called Desert Transportation Services, which was supposedly a legitimate logistics business. But when Dean had Mickey investigate further, they discovered that Desert Transportation was a front company with connections to several other businesses that seemed to exist only on paper. Dean also began talking to people who worked in Las Vegas's service industries, hotel maids, bartenders, security guards, asking if they had noticed anything unusual. What he learned was deeply disturbing. Several hotel employees reported seeing young women who appeared to be foreign nationals being moved in and out of certain hotel rooms under suspicious circumstances. These girls always looked scared and confused. A maid at a downtown hotel told Dean they didn't speak much English, and they were always accompanied by men who wouldn't let them talk to anyone. A bartender at a casino told Dean about customers who would openly discuss ordering girls as if they were talking about ordering food. They would come in and talk about having fresh merchandise available for discerning clients, the bartender explained. "I always thought it was disgusting, but I didn't know who to report it to." Dean began to understand that Las Vegas was being used as a hub for a sophisticated human trafficking operation that was bringing women from other countries and forcing them into prostitution. The operation appeared to involve multiple hotels, transportation companies, and corrupt officials who were being paid to look the other way. But Dean's most shocking discovery came when he learned the identity of the man who was running the entire network, the Kingpin. Through his investigation, Dean discovered that the human trafficking operation was being run by Vincent Torrino, a man who presented himself as a legitimate Las Vegas businessman but was actually one of the most dangerous criminals on the West Coast. Torrino owned several escort services, massage parlors, and modeling agencies that were actually fronts for prostitution operations using trafficked women. He had connections with organized crime families, corrupt law enforcement officials, and politicians who helped protect his business from investigation. Most disturbingly, Torrino's operation was international in scope. Women were being brought to Las Vegas from Eastern Europe, Southeast Asia, and South America under false promises of legitimate work opportunities. Once they arrived, their passports were confiscated, and they were forced into prostitution to pay off their transportation debts. The women were told that they owed tens of thousands of dollars for their travel expenses and would not be allowed to leave until their debts were paid. Since the women were charged for food, housing, clothing, and other necessities at inflated prices, their debts actually increased over time rather than decreasing. It was a system designed to keep the women in permanent slavery. Dean learned that Torrino's operation was holding approximately 40 women in various locations throughout Las Vegas, with new women being brought in regularly to replace those who became too ill or difficult to control. The women who tried to escape or contact authorities were severely punished, and several had simply disappeared after attempting to seek help. Dean realized that he was facing a criminal enterprise that was far more sophisticated and dangerous than anything he had ever encountered. But he also realized that those 40 women would continue to suffer unless someone with resources and influence took action to help them. Building the case. Dean knew that simply reporting what he had learned to local law enforcement might not be effective, since Torrino's operation clearly had connections with corrupt officials. Instead, Dean contacted the FBI field office in Las Vegas and requested a meeting with agents who specialized in organized crime and human trafficking cases. FBI agent Sarah Martinez listened to Dean's information and immediately recognized that he had uncovered evidence of a major criminal enterprise. "Mr. Martin, what you've discovered appears to be consistent with intelligence. We've been gathering about international human trafficking operations using Las Vegas as a distribution hub," Agent Martinez told Dean, "but we've been unable to gather enough evidence to obtain search warrants or make arrests." Dean realized that his celebrity status and ability to move freely in Las Vegas's entertainment world gave him access that law enforcement agents didn't have. "Agent Martinez, what kind of evidence would you need to shut down this operation and rescue those women?" "We need documentation of the trafficking activities, financial records showing the money flow, and ideally recorded conversations with the people running the operation." Dean made a decision that would put him in extreme danger. "I'll get you that evidence." Over the next month, Dean Martin became an undercover investigator, using his entertainment industry connections to gain access to the locations and people involved in Torrino's trafficking network. Dean attended parties and social events where Torrino and his associates were present, wearing concealed recording devices provided by the FBI. He engaged Torrino in conversations about business opportunities and investment possibilities, gradually leading Torrino to reveal details about his criminal activities. Dean also used his celebrity status to visit the hotels and other locations where trafficked women were being held, gathering evidence about their living conditions and treatment. The evidence Dean collected was comprehensive and damning. The rescue operation. On June 15, 1974, armed with the evidence that Dean had gathered, the FBI launched a coordinated raid on 12 locations throughout Las Vegas that were connected to Torrino's human trafficking network. The raids were simultaneous, designed to prevent Torrino and his associates from destroying evidence or harming the trafficked women. Dean was present during several of the raids, helping to identify victims and providing translation assistance for women who spoke limited English. The scope of what the FBI discovered exceeded even Dean's investigation. 40 women from 8 different countries were rescued from various locations. Many were in poor physical condition from malnutrition, medical neglect, and physical abuse. The women ranged in age from 16 to 28, and most had been trafficked for periods ranging from 6 months to 3 years. Financial records showed that Torrino's operation had generated over $2 million in revenue over the previous 2 years, with virtually none of that money going to the women who were forced to provide the services. Vincent Torrino and 23 of his associates were arrested on charges including human trafficking, kidnapping, money laundering, and racketeering. The evidence that Dean had helped gather was so comprehensive that most of the defendants eventually pleaded guilty rather than risk trial. Torrino was sentenced to 35 years in federal prison. But for Dean, the most important outcome was the rescue of the 40 women who had been trapped in the trafficking network, helping the survivors. Dean's involvement in the case didn't end with the arrests and convictions of the traffickers. He established a private fund to provide medical care, counseling services, and financial support for the rescued women. Many of the women needed extensive medical treatment for injuries and health problems caused by their time in captivity. Dean also hired immigration attorneys to help the women navigate the complex legal process of remaining in the United States or returning safely to their home countries. Several of the women chose to stay in the United States and needed assistance with obtaining legal residency status, finding legitimate employment, and learning English. Dean personally spent time with many of the survivors, helping them understand that they were safe and that they would receive the support they needed to rebuild their lives. Maria Santos, a 19-year-old woman who had been trafficked from Colombia, later wrote Dean a letter describing how his support had saved her life. "Mr. Martin, when I was rescued from that horrible place, I didn't believe the FBI agents who told me I was safe. I had been lied to so many times by men who promised to help me. But when you came to visit me in the hospital and promised that you would make sure I had everything I needed to start a new life, I could see in your eyes that you meant it. You didn't just help rescue my body from those criminals, you helped rescue my hope for the future." Dean kept in touch with many of the survivors for years, helping them through the challenges of recovering from their traumatic experiences and building new lives in freedom. The lasting impact. Dean Martin's investigation of the Torrino trafficking network had consequences that extended far beyond the rescue of 40 women. The case became a model for how celebrities and other influential individuals could use their resources and access to assist law enforcement in combating human trafficking. FBI agent Martinez, who had worked with Dean on the investigation, said that Dean's involvement had been crucial to the operation's success. Mr. Martin's celebrity status gave him access to people and places that law enforcement agents couldn't penetrate. Without his cooperation, we never would have been able to gather the evidence needed to shut down this network. The case also led to increased awareness of human trafficking in Las Vegas and resulted in stronger cooperation between federal authorities and local law enforcement agencies. Several other trafficking operations were identified and shut down as a result of intelligence gathered during the Torrino investigation. But Dean's most lasting contribution was his establishment of the Martin Foundation for Human Trafficking Survivors, which continued to provide support services for victims of trafficking throughout the western United States. The foundation funded safe houses, medical care, legal assistance, and job training programs for trafficking survivors. Over the next 2 decades, the foundation helped over 500 survivors rebuild their lives after escaping from trafficking situations. Dean's work with trafficking survivors also influenced other entertainers to become involved in anti-trafficking efforts. Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., and other major entertainers began supporting organizations that fought human trafficking and helped survivors. The entertainment industry's involvement helped bring national attention to the issue of human trafficking and generated millions of dollars in funding for anti-trafficking programs. When Dean Martin died in 1995, representatives from anti-trafficking organizations throughout the country attended his funeral to honor his contributions to protecting vulnerable women. Maria Santos, who had become a social worker, helping other trafficking survivors, delivered a eulogy on behalf of all the women Dean had helped rescue. "Dean Martin saved my life and the lives of 39 other women who were trapped in a nightmare that most people can't imagine. But he didn't just save our lives. He showed us that there are people in this world who will risk their own safety to protect strangers who are in danger. Every woman I help escape from trafficking situations, I tell them about Dean Martin, the entertainer who became a hero because he couldn't walk away from people who needed help." The 40 women who were rescued from the Torrino trafficking network went on to live productive, free lives. Several became advocates for other trafficking survivors. Others pursued education and careers that had been denied to them during their captivity. All of them carried with them the knowledge that Dean Martin had cared enough about their lives to risk his own safety to help them. And Dean Martin, who had built his career on entertaining people and making them happy, had discovered that his most important performance was the one that happened off stage, in parking garages and hotel rooms and FBI offices, where he used his fame and influence to save lives rather than just entertain them. The end.